And we're live, streaming live to you from the footsteps of New York City. We are Music Matters with Jason Tramm, and we're delighted that you can join us for a unique podcast community where we explore the issues and challenges of the performing arts world as seen through the eyes of distinguished colleagues. Please remember to subscribe to us on YouTube and smash that bell icon for the most up-to-date information on upcoming guests and topics. And we'd like to thank our audience. We just hit our 1,300th subscriber, and we're delighted that we're growing and that we can provide these wonderful artists and these conversations to you. Please remember to share our videos. We love that, and like and comment and help us to grow our community as much as possible. To find our past 100 episodes, you can go on our website at www.jasontram.net. And we also have on our next couple months of next guests. So we have some really exciting guests in a variety of genres, from opera to world music to classical concerto soloists, you name it. We have it on Music Matters. So we're delighted you can join us. Our guest today is Mr. Stephen LaBrie, a dynamic baritone who is rising to the top of the opera ranks. And we're so excited he's here today. He also has an incredible COVID story, and we're delighted to share that with you. Welcome, Stephen.
Hi, thanks, Jason. It's good to be here.
How are things in New York today?
Things are good. The weather is kind of getting nice. So that makes me happy. It's sunny. As you can see, I have like almost direct sunlight coming through the window, so I'm super happy about that.
Nothing like natural light, right? Not the artificial fluorescent type, but the natural is the best for us.
Also, today is the anniversary of all the emails, all the cancellation emails that I got from my manager. So happy 1-year anniversary to the D-Day for opera.
So let's go back. Let's just relive those feelings. Like, just help us out. And artist works so far in the past in opera to get the contracts, to get the jobs lined up. What did that feel like when this all started to happen?
Well, I had a couple things coming up last year, and actually, I had just contracted COVID right at the very beginning. So I was sick probably around March 9th or 10th. And of course, I wasn't sure if it was COVID, and I never got tested at the time, but I got tested for antibodies only a couple months ago, and they were positive. And I had all of the symptoms: the loss of taste and smell, the dry cough. I had all of the symptoms, so I was pretty sure it was COVID, and it was a pretty nasty sickness. I didn't go to the hospital or the doctor or anything at the time because back then it was like,
You just didn't unless you were at death's door. You did not go.
And it was 10 hours in line, standing outside in the cold. Anyway, I was supposed to go into rehearsals for Carmen with Jazz at Lincoln Center with, oh gosh, it's been so long at this point, I can't even remember with whom. But it was, so I was going to perform it, but it was only a 2-week, Master Voices, that was the company. It was only a 2-week rehearsal period. And so, we were about to start rehearsals on the 16th of March. And I was sick, and I was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I need to tell them. I need to, I was kind of waiting to see if I was going to get better or if like I wasn't really sick. And then just like, because like right after that, it was right after the 13th is when it started getting really bad. And so, and it was because it started out pretty mild. So anyway, I got an email saying that it was canceled. And I was like, oh my God. And then I got an email saying that my Tulsa contract was canceled. My Carnegie Hall contract was canceled. Everything was like being either canceled or postponed, and seeing what it was going to happen in the future. And yeah, of course, it was like kind of crazy. It was so surreal that I wasn't crushed and devastated in a way that I would imagine I would have been. I was kind of like, this is weird, because like, at those times it was like, COVID is going to last 2 weeks. We're gonna
mini vacation. We're gonna
right.
come back right out.
Right. So, I was like just kind of like appalled by how like far in the future things were being canceled, because I feel like things were canceled way into the spring, and so I was just like, wow, this is crazy. But yeah, I'll never forget how I just got all these emails in one day about these cancellations, and it was March 13th, and it was a Friday. So there's that.
We're happy that the agents haven't all jumped out the window, because you can only imagine these poor agents. Same thing. They booked all these shows, the calls, the work that goes into it. Yeah, it's certainly a day we'll never forget. So everything's canceled. We're home for way longer than we think we are. How did you react to that, and what did you find out about yourself?
So yeah, I mean, initially I just thought, wow, like I was so shocked at how fragile the arts community is, and how fragile everything is with, any sort of public gathering, which we rely on that. Opera isn't a digital art form. It's a public, it's a live art form. So I just thought to myself, like, there were so many people that I saw whose lives didn't really change. The only difference was that they went into into home, working from home and not going to the office, which can be a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, I think everyone's missing that social interaction at this point, but not having the hassle of commuting is kind of nice, and being able to work from anywhere. So I thought about those things, and I'd already been considering this idea of like adding a skill to my skill set. I didn't go to college. I went straight to the Academy of Vocal Arts, and I don't have a degree. And so like my options are kind of limited in what I can do in this life and career, because of the systems that we're in, that require, so many people require a degree these days, which is a completely new concept. My grandparents didn't have a degree. It's only a couple of generations that they're forcing you to do this. So I started studying JavaScript, and studying a coding language, and studying, software engineering, and all of these types of concepts in order to.
So you took the learn to code meme very seriously.
I did. I started doing a ton of research, and research on like some sort of accelerator programs that would help you, like, break into tech. And my sights were set pretty low at the beginning, because I didn't know how capable I was. And
did you already have a background in this? Did something you always loved, or was it something new that you discovered?
It's a new discovery for me. It's not something that I ever had a background in. Yeah, so I was so like music focused for my entire life, since high school. I've been so music focused without any sort of other things coming in. And so yeah, so I really just refocused my energy to studying coding and learning everything I can about it and everything I can about computer science. And so I took some, some kind of like intro programs that were, oops, I should
No worries, no
cut off my
worries.
Slack. Um, and so I took some intro programs, and eventually I ended up getting into like one of the best, um, programs out there, which has been an amazing experience. It took me a really long time to learn enough to get to a certain level and learn enough concepts and be able to execute these concepts in a way that would actually allow me entrance to this program, which is called Codesmith. And it is, people, there's this term boot camp that people use for these types of things. And this is not a boot camp. This is a software engineering immersive program that really, when the amount that we have after having graduated, I just graduated yesterday. So
Congratulations, that's exciting.
the amount of knowledge that we have and the experience that we've obtained is so much further than just like an entry level position, because we've worked on teams and we produced a product. I launched a product a couple of weeks ago that's a developer tool for software engineers to use to help them in their development. So it's amazing how far I've come, and I couldn't have done it without them, and I couldn't have done it, especially the biggest part of it was my community, because I made the best friends that I've ever made there. I think that oftentimes the opera industry is pretty solitary, and I've never really felt the same sense of community and like, helping hands that I have from the opera industry personally as I have from the tech industry and from these other software engineers that I now know. And so, I've made some incredible friends over Zoom,
Amazing.
and we've done incredible things together. And I've actually just been hired by Codesmith to work as a software engineer for them. So I'm super excited to continue my journey with them because, they've really gotten me to this point, and I'm thrilled to continue working and at the same time continue my singing career, which, I have a few things coming up. I just got contracted to do Carousel in Central City.
I was just saying, congratulations on that. It's great to see artists working again. I'm so happy to see people saying, I have a singing job. I have a playing job. It's really exciting.
Right. And I have a recital in a solo concert with my partner in Florida. So I think, opera companies and, concert venues and, are evolving to like, do outdoor things with social distancing and to accommodate what we're in right now. And I think so many companies could benefit from utilizing outdoor spaces right now, because that's the only thing we can really do.
That's the option right now. It's the safest option, certainly, and it's kind of, but maybe that's the first step on the road back to the opera house.
Yeah.
Why don't we go back in time? Did you always know you wanted to be a singer, or were you always performing?
I've always loved singing. For me, it's never been about, I do love the lifestyle because I love the traveling, but it's never been about the glamour or like the idea of being a singer. For me, it's been about the work. I've always loved the work. I've loved practicing. I could sit in a room and practice for hours. I've always loved that. And I think that sounds so basic, but I know a lot of people who don't feel that way. And that's just not me. My joy for singing has always been at the forefront. Actually, so I started out in high school. I started singing kind of more seriously, taking voice lessons, and I was initially starting with like pop music and like mariachi, which is incredibly operatic. It has an operatic tradition because it's sung with like a super loud band, and you have to sing over them. So I'm Mexican. I grew up in Texas. My mother's from Monterrey. So that was like a heavy influence for me, and it's something that I'm coming back to at this point because for example, my concert in Florida, which I've been doing this for the last couple of years, but it's something I want to get more into, is singing more mariachi, singing more Mexican songs, singing more of those old classics.
I love when singers put something of themselves into their recitals, when people find
Yeah.
what makes them uniquely individual and they put that as part of their traditional opera arias, art songs, then something that speaks to them and their soul.
Right. And it's actually, there's so much amazing music out there that's really, you can't find sheet music to it. So that's actually the limitation that I'm having now. So what I'm trying to do at this point is find someone who can make a piano vocal for me, who can listen to something, maybe have a chord chart, because there's chord charts out there, but then because it's all oral tradition, people just know these songs, I guess, or maybe there's a database somewhere, but I don't know where it is. But I'm trying to find piano vocals of this music, or make some, so that for the next recital that I have coming, in the future, I'll have like a lot more repertoire.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
So, what mariachi music? Did you grow up with singing that as a kid?
I came to it a little later. I actually, I grew up listening to it. I didn't really sing it, but then once I reached my singing stage, I picked songs that I really, really liked, or that spoke to me as a child, and I learned them properly. And then I would go to restaurants and stuff like that, and sing with live bands for fun.
Awesome.
Find out. It wasn't like I was hired. I was I would find out where those live bands were, and then I would go to that restaurant, and they would have audience members come up and do a song or whatever, and I would always go as this teenager and sing, and everyone was like, wow, because I had already such an operatic sound as a 16-year-old.
So already the pipes are already there. That's great.
Right. There's actually recordings of me. I should post these recordings of me doing some mariachi.
Absolutely. People love that.
So yeah, and then I went to AVA as I was the youngest person to go there. I was in high school still.
You went to AVA out of high school?
I did. I don't.
I know so many people who went to AVA, and I've had them on the show, and I've never even heard that. Wow.
Yeah, it's not normal, and I don't think anyone should do it. So take my advice.
I mean, the people I know who went to AVA have told me a lot about it, and I know some of the maestro. I know Maestro Macasaurus, and it's just an incredible place to really hone your craft. And wow, usually people come out of their undergraduate degree, maybe a master's, a post, because it's so intense.
It's a tough environment. It really is, and for a young person, it's really tough because it's your world. At least it was for me. I'm the type of person, I can't separate. I can't be like, oh, I don't care about that. If I'm doing something and I'm focused on it and I'm working for people and all that stuff, I give it my all. And all the games that they play with you, if you care too much, it really hurts you and it damages you. So for me, that was a problem. So I feel like if I had a little more of a bird's eye worldview as someone who has more experience and older, it might have not been so damaging for me, or so I might have not been so enveloped in the environment, and I might have had a little more separation from it. So that's what I'm kind of trying to do now, and I actually think has benefited me as a singer, having something else and having this other pursuit that has that would allow me the ability to make another stream of income with another passion of mine that doesn't have to do with singing. Actually gives me the ability to be a better singer. I've actually found that my singing has gotten better since last year.
Wow.
Even though I've taken my focus away from it in so many ways and refocused my energy. I don't practice as much as I used to because I'm so focused on software engineering, but when I do practice, my singing is better. It's easier. It feels more expressive. I feel like when I'm performing, I'm more connected to the music. But I think it's because the pressure's off.
Gives yourself a mental break, and you can come back more focused when you do come back. That's really a good strategy, and that'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. Were your parents musical?
No.
Really?
Not at all.
What did they make of this rising star voice that comes out of the blue? And what did they make of all this?
It was really hard at the beginning because I remember wanting to do my college auditions, and college auditions are expensive. To audition for Juilliard, Manhattan School of Music, all these places, they charge you an arm and a leg to just apply. It's not cheap. And I don't come from a rich family. I come from a middle class, family that has money struggles. So for me, it wasn't like, so I wasn't even asking them for money. I was paying for it myself. I had a restaurant job.
Wow.
So I paid for my whole college audition tour. I saved money. I was really good at saving money. As a waiter, I would work all the time. And I've always been this way. I've always been like someone who's like, self-sufficient in a lot of ways. Not now. Now I'm a sugar baby because I have no money. I have had no income for a year.
That's about to change with the new
That is about to change.
graduation.
So my partner's been supporting me because he still works at Juilliard, and of course, I've been getting unemployment. But anyway, so I wasn't asking them for money or anything, and so but they were fighting with me about this, going to do all these auditions for these expensive schools, and like not having an idea of like where I was, and it wasn't great. I remember I had a really early development vocally. And so I remember and I've always had like a dark color to my sound. It's just been the way it's always been since I was young, and everyone's like wanting to take that from me or make, every time I've been in a situation where a vocal coach or a teacher, not really teachers have done it as much, but it's always like a vocal coach or has tried to like make my voice something that it's not, it's always ruined me. And I've always been, it's sent me down a rabbit hole because they don't, people don't understand that when you're a young person, what a color to your voice could be. So at least that's been my experience. If someone has a different experience, I can't speak to that. I like
you can only speak to your own life.
Because I know how people like to come and like jump on you when you say something. Oh, well, so-and-so, I love her color of her voice. Okay, great. Well, I wish I'd known you when I was 18 then.
But so there are others like yourself who started so young and just had the color and just started working right away, or had precocious starts. James Morris comes to mind. He was really young when he started to become known. Rosa Poncell is legendary, of course. There's so many. There are these voices that are kind of that are born so young and it just kind of happens for them.
Right.
But it must be real. I've always wonder about those. Like how does that affect them personally? How does that, being thrust into that position so young, it must be a challenge.
Yeah, I think it all depends. I wasn't in a nurturing environment at that time. So that was hard because it actually sent me kind of, I think that, I actually got into a bit of vocal trouble towards the end of my time at AVA. And as I said, people were trying to change my voice, and I felt like I wasn't being supported. And so I went and found a teacher that was able to help me and kind of get me back on track. But it took 2 years, and 2 years of time where I wasn't doing auditions and where I stopped doing competitions and, a little bit of like it's hard to get back on that horse once you get off, and
the foundation of the house has to be intact in order to build that next level.
Right. And, people forget about you easily. The minute you walk out the room, there's another person. So, I do feel like it was kind of like a moment for me that I missed, even though I was only 22 at the time, but it seemed kind of like I was about to take another step, and then I backed away from it because my voice was having issues. So, and getting back on, like I said, is really difficult. People don't, it's not an inviting thing, So, but back to when I was in high school, I did the Dallas Opera competition. And I think that changed everyone's perspective because I won $5,000
as a high school student.
Yeah.
Wow.
I got I can't remember. I got a place, one of the places, maybe third or fourth or something. And then I got a Mozart award and an audience prize or something. And after I won that money, my family kind of changed their mind.
What's that is incredible. And that started the pathway to the next level and meant to be. So you finish up AVA, you got your technique lined up, you've got the new teacher, and when did things start to open up for you?
So I started getting back into, competitions and auditions and things like that, and actually went back to AVA for a little bit, for just a semester. And my goal was to get a manager. So I thought, well, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna show everyone that I'm back on the horse and I'm ready to perform again and all these things. I go back. We start I think or maybe it was a week before I started. I did a concert with Eve Queller, called Eve Queller and Friends, and it was a concert. There was amazing people on it. It was like Jen Rowley was on it, and we did like the Ned Silvio duet. And
She's coming on the show in 2 weeks.
oh, nice. She's so funny. I love her. So, and there were a lot of other like really amazing singers on it. And I had invited a bunch of managers to come watch the performance, and I did a bunch of great arias. Like I did Silvio with Jen, and then I did, Peak Dom, and all of these like great pieces. And it was like a really perfect performance for like an audition. And so then a manager from Kenny was there that I had invited, and he wanted to sign me, and so I signed with him. And so after I signed with him, AVA was asking me to do some repertoire that I didn't want to do, and I didn't feel was appropriate at the time. And my manager at the time had like advised me against it. And so as a result, we parted ways, I will say. So I left after that one semester, but that was fine because I had accomplished my goal of getting a manager. So once that started, I was doing auditions, and I was like, starting to get work and again. And I had already like, I'd sung at Dallas before. The former artistic director of Dallas Opera, Jonathan Pell, I met him when I was 17, and I sang for him. And back then my audition aria was Di Provenza from Traviata. As it is, as a 17-year-old.
The 17-year-old grandfather, that's great.
Right. And, he always really liked me. And so he had already hired me. He hired me right at the beginning of my vocal crisis. And I sang there, and I did badly. And then right after my vocal crisis, I sent him some recordings, and he was like, "Oh, I'm really glad you're back on track. I'm going to hire you for Don Cairo." So I'd already had that before I signed with my manager at Dallas. And then from there, he rehired me again to sing in Bohème. And then, I started getting just contracts and starting to work, full time and just do the regular singer travel thing. So it's kind of been that way since.
Yeah, you've sung for most of the major regional companies. I see Florida Grand Opera, and I see Sarasota, and all these really important companies that are integral to maintaining that full-time singer's career. Then COVID hits, right? And everything falls, and so what? How does a singer maintain their sense of being an artist when all that we kind of hold dear is kind of removed?
Yeah, so right before COVID, I had just made my European debut, which was super important for me. I had sung in Paris with New York City Ballet. I went on tour with them, which was the best gig ever. Because what
was the piece?
It was Estancia.
I love Ginastera.
And the piece, it was choreographed by Christopher Wheeldon. It was so beautiful.
Amazing.
I loved singing with dancers. It was my second time doing it because I did a Die Schöne Müllerin with Jessica Lange Dance Company, which doesn't exist anymore. But it was one of the most beautiful things. I mean, to sing that piece, first of all, is gorgeous. But then second of all, to do it for dancers where you're getting the whole thing performed in front of you, it's like, and you're just part of the scene. It is like such a great experience. So I did Estancia with New York City Ballet, and we went to Paris. And of course, the piece is only 30 minutes long. So my responsibilities were really minimal, to me.
Great gig.
It was 2 weeks, So, but I don't count that because it was with an American company. But I'd gone on an audition tour a few years ago. I was hired by, I sang in Frankfurt, and Bernd Lobe, who runs Frankfurt, also runs, he had just started running this Tiroler Festspiele Erl, which is in Earl, Austria, or Erl, as they say. And no one knows where that is. It's right like across the border of Munich. And so, it's near Munich, across the border in Germany. It's like an hour and a half away from Munich.
One of those amazing secret festivals that are just so popular in Europe in the summer.
Awesome. Beautiful. And so, and they have a winter festival too. So I was there just around Christmas, and I made my debut. He rehired me at the opening night party, which is exactly what you want to happen, which is very hard to, to get someone to do. Opening night party says, take a look at this role in this Offenbach opera that they were going to do, which is like, it was like such a good role. I was astonished by how good this role was. And happy to say that they had just reoffered me another contract. It's not the same opera because they had to cancel it, but it's a different opera, which I'm excited to go back to do. Anyway, so I just made my debut. I did a European audition tour, which I hate doing. I hate auditioning, and I especially hate doing an audition tour in Europe because you're spending so much money, and you're spending so much time, and from my experience, the auditions are never scheduled in advance. They're always scheduled like on a Monday for a Thursday. So you're there kind of like losing your mind, like, what am I doing with my life? That's how I've always felt doing them. So I spent a month doing that. I decided to come home in February. And it was funny because I flew to Verona. When I was flying to Verona, I saw someone wearing a mask in the airport. And I was like, this is weird. COVID had just started to be like chatter about COVID in the news and things like that. And I didn't realize that our life was going to turn into this. I come back to the US, spend all of February here. My birthday is in March, had a birthday celebration. Suddenly March 13th hits. I'm sick with COVID. Everything is canceled. And, I start this new journey, a divergent path in my life, which I'm super grateful for. I mean, COVID has been devastating in so many ways, but I feel like in life, life is about experiencing many different things. And it's not only about one thing. And I think that I was so concerned with my career as a singer and my image as a singer and all of these things that the weight has been lifted because COVID has shaken up the entire industry. If I were to say to someone, oh yeah, I studied JavaScript for a year and I'm aiming for a software engineering role, they wouldn't say I'm stupid. Oh, how could you do that? But you're a singer. Are you singing anymore? Of course I'm singing. Why would I not be singing? I've always been a singer. Why? It's not suddenly I type on the computer and my voice goes away.
Of course.
I do both. And so I feel like this whole structure that we've kind of been, these rules that no one made up that we've been abiding by aren't the rules that we have to abide by anymore,
And the discipline that you've put into your performing career is going to translate easily into coding, into whatever you wanted to transfer into.
Yeah, exactly. And I think of course I'm dedicated to singing. I've always been dedicated to singing. And I've built a foundation at this point where I don't have to practice 5 hours a day every day in order to maintain something. I can practice once a week and it's just as good as it was a week ago. It doesn't change. It's only getting better, in my opinion. And I, as I told you earlier, I studied with Michael Paul, and I didn't have very many lessons during COVID, and I've just started to pick them back up because, I have a concert coming up, and the things that we're discovering vocally, because I'm doing some pop stuff and I'm doing some more kind of musical theater things, kind of in a legit classical way. But the things that we're discovering is adding all of this more, so much more flexibility. And I haven't lost any of the technique that I had before, So I think that it has changed my entire worldview of things. And I think that I think people, or maybe at one point I thought that I needed singing. I needed opera. I needed the stage and a performance to really identify as an artist. And, there was a time in my life when my voice was wrecked and I was putting it back together and fixing it, years ago, where I lost my identity because I wasn't performing. But I don't feel that way anymore. I feel like my identity has only become stronger. And all of these criticisms and all these voices and all of these things that once would tear me down and upset me, if someone said, oh, I don't like your singing, I don't care anymore. I really don't care anymore. It's
with all the people out there, there's so many that not everyone's going to love you. That's a tough lesson for all of us to learn. We all take it so seriously, our performing and our art so seriously, but you have to be bold and you have to be yourself.
Yeah. So I think, it's really changed me for the better. I feel so much more chill now than I ever was. Of course, I have anxiety about all of these things, about scheduling, about making things work, about singing, about my tech career, about all this stuff. But the reality is I don't feel like I'm beholden to the paradigms that we were once in.
I think those paradigms are now so no one really knows. So I think those paradigms have all shifted, and you're going to be at the vanguard of this kind of this new career and of getting back to your performing career while including another stream, so a revenue stream that you can work around with.
Right, and my hope is that the opera companies become more flexible. And also understand, I think that there needs to be an understanding amongst everyone that it's really hard to make a career in this, because even if you're making, $10,000, people think, oh, $10,000 is a lot of money. You go to do a show, two performances, you make 5,000 each. You do, $10,000. You make $10,000. What what people don't realize is that's not a lot of money, because all the money that is taking you to get there, to get to that show, prepare the role, have the lessons, you know do the traveling, do everything that you need, all the auditions, all the waiting around, all the time that you were free, all, everything that is taken to get there, your manager fee, it dwindles it down to being almost nothing. So, I think what people don't realize, what I'm discovering is, if, my tech career, all the money that I make is mine. I don't have to give it to anyone. I'm not taking private lessons, so like it's a completely different, um, just like a different mentality. So I think that, like, I think people need to realize that, like money is real. We live in this system where we need money, and like we can't begrudge artists for wanting to be comfortable. Not all of us come from wealth, and not all of us have, these opportunities, and so some of us need to, like, find avenues, and I think that we should encourage that as a community, and encourage people to have a side hustle and
There's so many other artists like we've seen them all on social media, and everyone's finding these different career pivots.
yeah.
And I'm seeing so many interesting, innovative people like yourself who are out there exploring and discovering. And I think that's only going to help people moving forward, even while they're maintaining their singing career. That there's these other avenues.
I think so too, because it kind of gives you the freedom. After my article came out, where I actually came out, like, I hadn't even announced or anything that I was doing this other thing, and I just, like, I was interviewing with Zachary Wolf, and I was like, just like spewing, I can't hide anything. So I was just telling him everything, and I was like, oh yeah, at my school is Coatsmith, and I'm doing this and blah blah blah. And then he he printed it, which is fine. I wanted him to, and I came out, and I was happy for everyone to read it. But a lot of artists reached out to me, a lot of other singers that either I knew or didn't know, and said to me, thank you so much for saying this. This is exactly what people needed to hear, because I've been so scared to let people know that I am a real estate agent now, or that I, work at a coffee shop, or that I, sell cars, or like whatever, like they've been so scared to, like, have this open dialogue, because they're afraid that people will see that and say, oh, you're not a serious singer anymore.
That couldn't be farther from the truth. Everyone's got to survive. We all
Mm-hmm.
have to find ways to keep the art alive. And I think what was it like when that hit? I mean, the New York Times features you in such an important article. I read it myself, and I was so inspired. I said, well, this is something I definitely want on the show, because there's hope, there's life, there's new innovations. If we try to do things the way they were done in the past, that time is long gone. The way
Mm-hmm.
Pavarotti worked and the way that Domingo built his career, that's a different avenue than we have today.
Yeah, and that might also, there are singers who make tons of money. I'm sure Netrebko is, made a lot of money.
She'll be okay.
Hoffman has made a lot of money in his career. So, I'm not saying that it doesn't exist. It's just that it doesn't exist in the same way for everyone. And from what people have told me, older singers in the past, who are still kind of in the career, or teaching, or, being coaches or whatever. I've heard, or Bartolos. I've sung with a few Bartolos who, are in their 70s at this point, or in their 60s. And I've said to me,
God bless those Bartolos. They're funny and they can act. That's a job you can do for a long time.
Bartolos. And, I've talked to them, and they say, oh, things were so different. I remember going and singing at, name regional company, and saying, doing 13 performances for $10,000 each, or whatever, and like now it's kind of 2 for less than that, and which is, I'm not begrudging any company, because they're doing what they can, and I understand that entirely. But it also is, a reality that the way that you can make money is not exactly the same. And with the university system, there's a lot more singers out there. So so with the article, what's funny is, I started my program in December, and it was the busiest time I've ever had in my entire life. Like, the schedule was from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. So, like,
Wow.
and then you had to work through lunch, through dinner, and after hours. So it wasn't like there was a whole lot of time to think about anything. So what happened was, Zachary Wolf reached out to me about this article, and then like everything after that was kind of aside, like an afterthought. Like I had a conversation. I said, "Yeah, great, let's have a conversation on the phone." All my emails were like in between things. I was like, "Let's have a conversation one day during lunch." I'm sorry, my schedule is super limited right now. We had a conversation, a pre-conversation to like how we were going to shape the article. And then we had our actual conversation like maybe a week or 2 weeks later or something. And then he was like, "Oh, and the photographer needs to come take photos of you." And I was like, "Oh my God, I'm so busy right now. I have no time." And so, I scheduled, the photographer got my number and I scheduled this time with him. And everything was like this, like rush. So I had Sundays off. So it was a Sunday, but it was raining. And he was like, "Let's just do it. Let's just do it." So we had actually got some amazing photos. I mean, he gave me all the photos too. I was like, dang, what? Like, I love this.
Awesome.
And so everything was like a real afterthought, in my opinion. And then I got all of these Instagram messages and these Facebook messages, all these people reaching out to me, and I've just been so busy. I haven't had really time to think about any of it. And I was just like, "Oh, thank you," and people asking for advice, and I'm trying to give it and trying to be open, because I feel like a lot of people have reached out to me for so many different things, and so I'm trying to be but I just had I've been in such a whirlwind for 3 months. I haven't had the chance for anything, but so yeah, it's been great. But what's funny is I mentioned Earl in my in the article about how like that contract was canceled, and what's funny is like 2 days before the article came out, they reached out to me and they said, "Oh, we want you to do this opera next season." And I was like, "Wow, yay!" And then the article came out. I didn't even know when the article was going to come out. I just knew that it was going to happen at some point. And the article came out, and then like I was like, "Oh, wow. Well, I guess I didn't have time to revise that."
Live without a net.
That's right.
So the response from the performing arts community has been very positive.
Very positive, yeah.
Yeah,
from amongst the singers, amongst many conductors, a lot of a few artistic directors. I was reached out to by as I mentioned, Jonathan Pell earlier from Dallas Opera. He sent me an email, our Radio Times article, and I've known him since I was a teenager. I love that guy. So it was nice, and so many people just coming out of the woodwork.
Shout out to those who believe in us when we're young, right? Those are
right.
Such special people.
They are. All these people I hadn't worked with in years just reaching out to me and sending me emails. It was actually really nice to hear from everyone, and it was like much bigger thing that, and even in the actual paper was like, it was big. And I was like, what? So it was really positive all around. I'm glad that I had the chance to do it. They asked me in.
We have our first question from the audience. This is Eve from Seattle, and she says, "What are some of the dream roles that you have in mind as you return to your performing career?"
I love Russian music, and I would love to sing Eugene Onegin. Love that piece. Let's see. I've done Florencia en el Amazonas, which is a Mexican opera by Daniel Catan. Favorite role of all time. Would do it again in a second. I love that opera. So it's also a dream role. What else? That's such a good question. I love Verdi, and I want to sing, Posa one day. What else?
Have you done Di Luna? I'm sure Di Luna's on the list.
It will be in the future. I haven't done it yet. I don't think I've ever done a Verdi role. Yeah. So
that's going to happen. But put that in the universe. Let that get out there.
I'm also really super excited about Rehearsal. Not going to lie. So the first singer that I heard growing up was, or one of the first singers was, my very first voice teacher gave me a CD of Leonard Warren and George London. Oh, yeah. And it was George London's
the dream team.
He was really trying to influence me. It was George London's musical theater album. And so, hearing If I Loved You and soliloquies on that. So of course, the first time hearing those pieces, because I didn't grow up, I didn't actually grow up like with a family who listened to musical theater or like watched the movie Carousel, or even like any of the classics like It's a Wonderful Life or like any of those Christmas movies. Like I didn't see any of that growing up. So like I don't even know what it's about yet. I haven't still not seen it. So like having my first exposure to soliloquy and If I Loved You and like all these great musical theater pieces being George London, is like very influential. So so from that point, it's always been, then I watched the movie and it's always been like a dream to do that role. So I'm really excited that it just kind of like appeared, which is really nice.
How do you approach the technique of singing musical theater versus opera? And do you find, what are the differences you find?
Yeah, I don't think of it as that different, honestly.
Especially Rodgers and Hammerstein. It's very
Yeah,
operatically minded.
right, exactly. I think I've also never had like a super because when I started singing, I started with Frank Sinatra, and like mariachi. So my idea of English isn't that formal, and I've never had like formal English training. So I don't. So when I sing in English, I think it already lends itself to being Americanized and like musical theater sounding. So, and I think it's nice. I don't think there's anything wrong with having I also love like Nelson Eddy and Jeanette MacDonald and like these people. So like this kind of like operatic musical theater operetta, love it. you know
Me too.
I will probably, because I've been kind of messing around with this recital, singing like some like Tony Bennett songs and things like that. So I'll probably try to incorporate some moments of that type of like kind of lighter kind of more speaky type of voice technique in it.
Do you sing that? Do you enjoy singing that repertoire? Is it something you like to do?
I love it. I actually, I got into singing because I love melodies,
Good reason. Telling stories and singing melodies, right?
Right, exactly.
What's better than that?
And I love the drama, so like so many Mexican songs are about, jealousy and getting stabbed in the heart, like
You're halfway there to opera.
exactly. So mariachi is right up my alley. This kind of like, I love ballads, so that like doing that type of stuff is right up my alley. Actually, the recital, I'm like, oh my god, everything I have is like, wanting you, lover, come back to me, who can I turn to when nobody needs me, like all of these like musical theater ballads. Like, is it too schmaltzy? And people I talk to are like, no, it's perfect.
So much great music to be made, and especially as we come back to this again, what's it going to feel like when you get to Central City? What do you anticipate? Some of the, I know for myself, I'm used to doing 8 rehearsals a week. That all changed to virtual rehearsals and screens, and the people I'm used to making music with, and the guest conducting, and all the human to human contact is very different now, and it will be until I come back this summer and start making live music again. What do you anticipate when you get into the rehearsal room for the first time? What do you think it's going to be like for you?
I'm really excited. I think because I've kind of been changed by this whole scenario we're in. I think that my approach to everything is going to be completely different. I don't think I'm going to be nervous, first of all, because why? Why be nervous? I think everyone is going to be so grateful to be there. I've gotten already such warm, welcoming messages. I'm actually replacing someone who has canceled the performance. So that's kind of why it's because they're redoing their season from last season. So it's already been, and I was like kind of in talks with them for this coming summer season that was going to be different than what they're doing. So they already like were talking to me about casting me this summer, but someone canceled and now they're replacing me. But I've already gotten really warm, welcoming messages from the company, which I don't know. Does that usually happen? Cast members have already reached out to me that I don't know, saying, "Oh, I'm so excited to work with you." I think that everyone is so itching to be like to make music and to be involved. I'm hoping, because I shouldn't say this to a conductor.
Oh, say it. We're on a podcast. It's perfectly cool.
I've always I think that a lot of times with working with conductors, there's a little bit of a stranglehold that they put on singers, and I'm hoping that that's kind of going to be released. I'm hoping that there's going to be more of a collaboration. I think that it should be this way. Why have it like, I have ideas. I want to do things. I want to move. I want to take time and move forward and things like that. Yes, give me suggestions because of course you're as a conductor, an outside person listening, but no reason to be rigid. I recently worked with a conductor who was so rigid, didn't listen. And by recently I mean like 2 years ago. Feels like yesterday. Didn't listen.
Pre-COVID.
Like we were never together, and and it's kind of like, look, I can't hear the orchestra. You can hear me, I can't hear you. Just move your arms differently.
I was trained by a great singers conductor, Silipini, who taught me you have to listen. You have to
Yeah.
listen to the singer. Watch the singer's body language. Watch the way they're breathing. When you hire the right singer, you want to give them flexibility because you
Right.
pick them because they're expressive, because they have something to say, and you
Yeah.
want to get the most out of that. For me, I love the collaborative nature of being a conductor. It's like it gives you a chance to listen to what works and to add something that you each bring something different to the equation, and when it's done right, they both enhance each other.
Right. I one of my most interesting experiences of my career was working with Will Crutchfield
Ooh,
at Teatro Nuovo 2 summers
very
ago.
fine conductor, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, interesting. Interestingly, interesting you say that because the concept of Teatro Nuovo is to use no conductor and to have the singers lead the orchestra, like it would have been when the piece was premiered. So we did La Straniera by Bellini, and it was set up in the way. Of course, there were moments where we had to connect, but we were actually taught how to lead the orchestra. And if you listen to some really really old recordings, it shows every like soloists jumping each first beat of every measure to show how the orchestra should land.
Catch up.
Yeah, exactly. And so like it was an interesting thing to me because like we're not formally ever trained as singers to lead in that way. And so it really taught me like because when you're doing that, everyone knows how to catch up. Everyone knows how to to be with you. And then when you want to take time, you do it slower, and then everyone can feel that. So I think that it's an interesting technique that singers need to learn. We need to be taught this. So I'm actually excited.
Whenever I've worked with the international singers or singers at that Met level, it's so funny. They dictate everything they want so clearly to the conductor. It's like this conversation's so easy, and it's like it takes so many years to develop that fluency and that kind of feeling with the orchestra. It takes decades on the job, I guess, to get that feeling to work.
It's true. Yeah, it takes a lot of experience. That's why I've always been a supporter of doing. You have to get on stage. You have to be with that orchestra. Just like in the old days, you read about, like Robert Merrill's. Oh, I have a funny story. I went to the Public Library of Philadelphia, checked out Robert Merrill's autobiography, and I opened it when I got home and he had signed it.
Wow.
I still have it.
That's worth something. That's incredible.
That's right. My library fee is probably really high by now.
Better not go to Philadelphia and get a speeding ticket. They'll
Never
take you
again. But yeah, so you read those things and you read how he went to summer stock and he did Escamillo, he did Barbara Seville a million times, so he had all this experience. I think that like that's what young people need is like this experience so that we can, they can have this fluency.
What advice do you have to young people coming up in the field, people like yourself who are jumping in there and at a very a challenging time? What would you say to those people?
I think my advice probably has changed in the last year. My first thing that I would say is just like I feel like I'm doing right now, learn a skill that you are able to do during the hard times, because there's not always going to be a time where you're working. There's times in my career I've had 6 months off, 9 months off, and then times where I've had gig after gig after gig after gig. It doesn't, and there's no way to really plan it. So many times in my career, have I had like every gig wants to schedule me in February, and there's like 5 companies that are like, oh, we're doing a show in February, and I can only pick one, and so my whole season is empty because all the companies that would have hired me have reached out for the same gig or the same.
That must suck terribly.
Yeah, let me tell you.
Oh.
So that would be my first piece of advice, and my second piece of advice would be to find your voice and cut out the noise. Don't let do your research, learn about the singers of the past. There's amazing resources on YouTube, find your joy in singing. There's a video I always go back to when I want to find my joy in singing. And that is Shirley Verrett singing Mon Coeur from Samson and Delilah.
Just divine.
It is.
I know the video too. It's just divine.
It's that black and white video.
Yep.
Every second of that video is like
Joy.
The most beautiful singing you could hear in your life, the most dynamic voice you could ever experience. And it's one of those where you're just like, God, if I could have heard this live, and it inspires you, it inspires so much joy in singing again, just to watch that video and how the elegance and the beauty, and it makes you think of opera is great, classical music is great. So I always go back to that, so find your joy, find your voice, go to people who are helping you, because I think oftentimes we get stuck with people who don't help us. And then we feel stuck with them and we feel like, oh, my voice is being ruined, but there's nothing I can do about it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
It takes a lot of self-confidence to be able to say that, right? With someone who's maybe has a great position or someone who's in a position of power like that, to know that difference, to be able to do that, right? That takes a lot of confidence.
My very first voice teacher said to me, you know, he was studying with a very important teacher in New York when he was in his singing career, his baritone. And he said to me, he and his wife both said to me that, you know, his voice was being ruined by this teacher. It was giving him all the wrong advice, all the wrong direction. He got super confused and he was getting into real trouble. And his wife said to him, who's not a singer, she said, so what would you rather, and he said, I can't leave him because my career would be ruined. And she says, so would you rather your career be ruined because you left this teacher, or would you rather your career be ruined because you have no voice left? So he had to choose. And
good observations.
Sure enough, he left the teacher, fixed his voice, and his career wasn't ruined. So it's not as serious as you think. Yeah, people are going to talk bad about you. That's just part of it, you know, and whatever, because someone is going to like you out there. I mean, it's not a guarantee. But
you know, you put your best out, you work hard on your art, you put your best out there, and people, you know, you will find an audience. You will, you know, if you're diligent and you work hard and you've done the right steps, you will get out there.
Right, exactly.
How can people find out more about your work and your upcoming concerts as they emerge? How can we find out more about you, Stephen?
So probably the best place would be my Instagram, because that's the thing that I update the most when it comes to my singing. So that's at Stephen LaBrie. And then I also have a Facebook page and a professional page, but I don't pay much attention to that, especially the professional page. And yeah, so probably Instagram is the best place to find me.
Okay, thank you so much. On your website as well, stephenlabrie.com.
Oh, that's true.
Wonderful website. I imagine now that you've got all this new to found technology, your website's going to be amazing.
It's going to be. I haven't worked on it yet, but it will be.
When you find a few minutes between learning how to become a computer or software engineer and then becoming a in-demand baritone. Very exciting. Right. Thank you so much for taking the time today to join us on Music Matters. It's really been a great conversation. I wish you all the success in the world when things open up again.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us on Music Matters. Please remember to subscribe to us on YouTube and smash that bell icon. Our next show is actually at 2 o'clock today, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, with noted New York City conductor Colin Britt, a composer and conductor and mostly active in the choral world who's done some wonderful work. Join us today, exciting. And remember, keep music alive.